out of law school, some of you may have seen those portraits in the hallway. Soya Menchikov, who was one of our legendary professors, became dean at University of Miami Law School and asked Harvey to join her in teaching at the law school. He has also taught at Loyola Marymount, Whittier College, but he decided that teaching was not for him. Can't understand why, but you can tell. And then he worked in a number of he worked as an investigative and legal reporter after he taught. And while he was in California, where he came from, he also covered the OJ trial and spent a long time doing that. I think you once told me that OJ was your life for a period of time, as it was a lot of people. Harvey is currently the executive producer and host and creator of TMZ Television and TMZ.com. He's also produced TV shows such as The People's Court and Celebrity Justice. Harvey is also known as a workaholic, consistently working 12 hours a day. He told me what time he gets up normally, and there seems to be no room in there for sleep. Rumor has it that most nights he doesn't go home and sleep. Instead, he's on the sidewalk with a camera, or at least watching people on the sidewalk with a camera. Harvey has won a number of awards, including several Emmys and a Golden Mike Award. And recently, it's been reported that Harvey's going to take his skills to Washington, not as a congressperson, but as coverage of what's going on in Washington. Now, before we begin, I'd like to just run a very, very short video. And what I've done is I've muted it because there's a nasty word in it, and I don't want to get on the show. So let's just show it very quickly. And okay. So this is Harvey on his television show. There was rap music in the background, but that's why there's a nasty word in it. There seems to be a common theme, right? All the way. I think what is this rap called? I think it's called What You Drink. I forget this, but there you go. So there's Harvey. There's Harvey in action. And so what we've got for Harvey. We've got a couple things for you. First, for you to wear on your neck. Well, actually, in Los Angeles, you don't need this, but I can't open it. But
I will wear that on the show.
Okay. Turn the air conditioning up. So there's that, and of course. We have one of these for you. It says University of Chicago, the law school. So with that, I'd like to introduce Harvey Levin to you.
It is the most improbable thing in the world that I'm standing here. Because I've always thought, people in my class, they're federal judges, they're partners in big law firms. Before I start, do you mind if I tell how I ended up here?
Absolutely.
How many people here are first year? Okay, well, you think you have it hard. When I started law school, I actually wasn't going to go to law school that year. I had entered the University of Wisconsin, a political science program, and I was going to get a PhD there. And I realized in about 2 weeks, although I loved skiing on the lake there, that the PhD program just wasn't for me. And I thought, I'll just get a master's maybe and then go to law school the next year. So I applied to all these law schools, and one of them was University of Chicago. And Dick Badger sent me a letter saying, as long as you're reasonably close, if you're ever in the neighborhood, stop by and we'll talk. So then I realized a master's in poli-sci wasn't going to do much for me, so I thought, I'm just going to go back to California. And I took a job in Sacramento and got an apartment, and this was, I think, on October 10th that I flew back to California, but I had a 6-hour layover in Chicago. And I think the school, the quarter was a week and a half old by then. And I landed and had this layover and ran to the law school, and Badger and I sat down for a few minutes, talked about nothing, and he said, "How'd you like to go to law school?" And I said, you know, I invested $20 in the cab ride, of course I would like to go to law school. And he said, no, he said, "Somebody dropped out of the first year class 2 hours ago. Do you want a spot?" And he was really smart about this too, because I said, look, let's start. All my luggage is at the airport. I've got a flight to Sacramento. I have an apartment there, I have a job there, I have no money. I would be hopelessly behind here. I have no place to live. I don't have money for tuition. And I started listing, and he said, you know, you worry too much, man. And then he said, you know, it's pretty tough getting into the school, and I cannot guarantee by any means you would get in next year. So this is a gift. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And I said yes, and he was so smart, because then he had me in, and then he said, look, I really can't admit you. He said, I got to convene the admissions committee. And so he said, postpone your flight in case we say no. And so I called the airport from the Green Lounge, and I called and I said, you know, somehow I got my bags. I don't remember how I even did it, but I got the bags on another flight, and I was waiting, and he came out 2 hours later, and he said, it took 2 hours, by the way. And he came out and he said, you're admitted. I said, great. Where do I sleep tonight? And so he said you could stay with the registrar who had a house on 65th Street. You know, it's funny, you didn't offer me your place now that I think about it. That's funny, I just thought of that. And so I went to the airport, got my bags. I swear to God this is a true story. And I got the bags and I got in the car. Now, mind you, this was a long time ago. It's a much safer place now. Much safer, totally different place. Not then. And I got in the cab, and the cab driver asked me where I was from, and I told him I was from Los Angeles. And he said, oh, my dad, he said, I grew up in Boyle Heights. And I said, well, my dad grew up in Boyle Heights. And he looked at me and he said, well, you must be a kike. And I thought, this is going bad. And he pulled a knife on me, took the money I had, actually he let me take all the bags out of the car. He was really nice. He let me take all the bags out of the car, out of the cab, and I was standing on 65th Street in the dark when I shouldn't have been there, and with no cell phone, and it was welcome to Chicago. And then the next day, I sat in probably this classroom thinking, boy, they must have learned a lot in that week and a half, because I don't know what the hell's going on here. And it couldn't get into study group because people were, that's the guy that's going to fail. So if you think you had it hard. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to talk just a little bit and then open it up to you guys, because you know, I'm sure there are questions you have about what I do and about what the state of journalism is and why a lawyer would do something like that. And I would love to open it up. But I want to talk about just a couple of things. And I want to start with parasocial experiences. That a lot of people think, my God, TMZ is doing this thing now where they've created these radical parasocial experiences, and people are now obsessed with other people's lives in a really unhealthy way. Yet, when you think about it, you know, parasocial experiences have existed for hundreds of years. 200 years ago, before there was TV and radio and the internet, there was a town drunk and a town whore. And everybody in the town didn't necessarily know who they are or know them, but they knew of them. And they became the shared experience, the shared form of communication, so that people could talk about them. And it wasn't so much they were interested in them, but it was something that they could talk to their friends about. And it became this commonality that was that they had in town. And you know, I suppose you could say it was gossip. But when you fast forward 100 years to television and radio and ultimately the internet, It's really the same thing. That television and radio, what it did was it made it less important for people to have direct social interactions with other people. And they became kind of projecting feelings onto people they had never met before and then using them as a jumping off point to discuss people. So journalism, journalists kind of became the town gossips. And you know, they may be reporting important things or frivolous things, but long before the internet came along, journalism became part of the parasocial experience. That, you know, you may not know about somebody, or you may not know somebody, but if if there's something that resonates about them and something you could talk to a friend about, it's just this commonality of interest. And that's, you know, the extension of that is TMZ. And, you know, we are kind of a town crier. And when we cover Britney Spears, or we cover Lindsay Lohan, or we cover Mel Gibson, it's not so much that they are inherently interesting people, but they have a lot of things in their lives that a lot of other people have. And it becomes this kind of shared experience that people can talk about. And I think that's one of the reasons it resonates. You know, when I started, and I always don't, I don't think of TMZ as starting TMZ. I always think back to 2002 when I started Celebrity Justice, because that was really a show about celebrities in the legal system, and I was always interested in that, on how they're treated and whether they're treated harshly, whether they're treated more leniently, what their issues are, and I always kind of wanted to bust that paradigm that Hollywood had created. You know, before we came along, publicists ran Hollywood, and they could tell every entertainment show in town, every magazine in town, here's what you're going to print. This may be a lie, but if you want so-and-so for the next interview, this is what you're going to say. And they were all lemmings, and they all did it. And it was, you know, no one was the wiser. And Hollywood was built on lies. And everybody was complicit in it. And publicists were pulling all the strings. All the strings. And it was all predicated on interviews. That if there was a, you know, everybody wanted the junket. Everybody wanted to sit down with so-and-so. And you don't get it if you don't play ball. And it's the way it worked, and they had a stranglehold on it. So, you know, our MO was simple when we started Celebrity Justice, which is, we're not going to do interviews. So you don't have the power over us to talk about, you know, we're not going to give you Tom Cruise because we don't want Tom Cruise. You know, we don't do sit-down interviews. We want to tell real stories. And they were stunned by it. But what we did one by one was to say to them, look, we will give you a fair shake on every story we do. We want to search for the truth on these stories. Some of them are going to be good stories, some of them are going to be bad stories, but we give you our word. We will come to you for comment. We will put your side in. We will employ all the journalistic skills that every other place, you know, in town uses. And I've worked at a lot of places, and we have everything in place plus a lot more to make sure we're accurate. And I said, we will give you a fair shake. And one by one, they started working with us. And it started to bust the paradigm. And when TMZ came along, then it just became not just celebrity cases, not just legal cases, but really reporting on the lives and not the illusions that the publicists were creating. And it really then leads into the issue of, are there zones of privacy for these celebrities? Which is, I guess, why I'm here. And I absolutely believe there are zones of privacy. And we have debates every day, every single day in that room, and I demand debates. If there's not noise in that newsroom, I stop things and create noise, because I want people talking and discussing and questioning all day long. And we constantly look at whether we're reporting in an area we shouldn't be. And it's coming up, frankly, increasingly. But the one thing I have learned, and it's funny because when I was sitting in this room, I think I took constitutional law in this room, and I remember laughing at Justice Stewart when he defined pornography, and now I live by his standard. And as absurd as it sounds, it is kind of, I know it when I see it. And I don't live by hard and fast rules in this job. I can't give you a rigid principle on where the line of privacy is. And I struggle with it all the time and think about it all the time. but I'll give you a couple of examples. Generally, when there is a lawsuit and when there's a public document filed, in my mind, that is fair game, and it's fair game rooted in the Constitution, and the notion being that you want an open system, and that when you shine a light on it, there tends to be less abuse than when there isn't a light shining. And I believe in that, but then there are still exceptions. I mean, I remember a case where a document, a pretty shocking document, was filed in the Britney Spears case. And it was absolutely fair game. A judge had signed an order, and there was a passage in there about her children. And it was extremely personal and embarrassing. And I remember reading it thinking, this has got to be a mistake. And I knew it. I knew it was a mistake. That it should never have been issued as an order. That it should have been sealed. And I could have published it. And I'm telling you, had I published it, it would have gone everywhere. It would have been huge news. It would have been huge. And it just felt wrong. Even though it was public record, and absolutely I could defend it based on privacy, it just felt wrong. And I called her lawyer up and I said, I got this document, and I cannot believe that you ever intended this to be public. And she panicked and just said, oh my God. She said, the clerk screwed up. This should never have been filed. I can't believe this. And she called the clerk, and they ripped it up and they sealed it. And the only copy that was out there was ours, and I ripped it up. And I'm not trying to act sanctimonious or anything here, but it just felt wrong. It just felt wrong. Brett Favre, I did not, we were offered that 2 weeks before it came out. We were offered it 2 weeks before it came out, and we didn't do it. It just felt like bedroom police to me. Yet we covered Tiger Woods like crazy. and I can distinguish it. And I can't distinguish it in a way that would probably sustain the kind of analysis that occurs in this room, but I could do it on a practical level, because Tiger Woods started out as a cover-up that everybody bought, that this was a simple car accident at 2 o'clock in the morning after Thanksgiving, where he hit 4 objects in 50 feet, and everybody was buying it. And we started going down the road and seeing this was just simply not true. And there were elements of kind of legalized, what some people called legalized extortion, but there were people making a lot of money off of this, making settlements. It became much more of a public thing than what Brett Favre felt like going in. And the same thing with Michael Phelps. I mean, look, we had the picture of Michael Phelps with that bong 3 months before it came out. And I remember saying to the staff, no. It felt like a setup. It felt like somebody set him up. It just felt wrong to me. And I actually put the picture up in the newsroom so that people could see it. And we looked at it for 3 months. And I knew it was eventually going to come out. But I didn't want to do that one. Now, again, I'm not saying we're not aggressive, because we are. We are aggressive, and we chase the news, and in the Mel Gibson story, we are all over that story, and it's and legitimately so, and I see a huge distinction between, say, Mel Gibson and the Michael Phelps picture, but I will say this, that there is not a hard and fast rule that you can live by. I mean, I tell my cameramen, they have to sign contracts where they don't chase people, that they don't trespass on people's property, they don't incite people, they don't break the law. I mean, I make them sign this, and we fired people who violate that. We fired people, and we put it right in their contracts. And then we have the, what I'm sure you've already learned, it's what, mid-October, that you've already learned the yuck factor. That's what I call it, which is just when it feels wrong, and that's something where you have to sit down and you talk it out, and does it feel right? Is it right to do? And that may be fuzzy, but I don't know how to live by a hard and fast rule in what I do. And the older I get, the harder it is for me to understand how to live by a hard and fast rule in any part of my life. It's just, there is just so much that factors into life, and especially in this job, that defies this kind of rigid analysis. So I'm hoping you challenge me, because I kind of like that. I do, because we self-analyze all the time, and you know, I walk away by saying that we are aggressive journalists, and yet I will defend a celebrity's right of privacy, and I will say there are zones of it, and believe we respect that, and you know, and I think I can argue that effectively to anybody. So if you want to challenge me on that, have at me. Or anything else. Yes?
You mentioned this sort of yuck factor, where there's a sort of a line where you think it's wrong to publish something. Do you encourage your reporters to follow that also, or do you encourage them to bring it to the news, or to, I guess, the editorial room for that discussion with you, or do you encourage them to exercise that on their own?
Well, it's all communal. I mean, my operation is very communal. My feeling is that, you know, it really is a Kevin Bacon city, where somebody is connected to somebody is connected to somebody. And so when we have our meetings, I have everybody in the meetings. I have PAs, I have runners, I have IT people, I have producers, and everybody shares and everybody pitches in ideas. The TV show is different from the website. I mean, I'm really talking more about the website than the TV show. Well, that's not true. The journalism part, I'm talking about the website. But you know, we have these communal meetings, and everybody's kind of pitching ideas. And you know, some of them are for the TV show, which is really just kind of a funny take on what's going on in Hollywood. The website is really more about, you know, let's find this story. What are you hearing about this story? And it really is, it's more journalism. But I have everybody involved in these meetings, and then all day long, everybody's in a big bullpen. And there's a lot of noise. And we're constantly debating it, and there are a lot of arguments, and people come at me all day long, either wanting to do something or not wanting to do something. But it's very loud and very open all day, so it's not like somebody can go off and do something on their own. We have a process. So if somebody comes up with a story, it has to go through the assignment desk has to vet it, then it goes to the editorial side. There's a supervising producer who has to approve it, it has to go through research, it has to go through legal, and if it's, you know, got any importance to it, I'll for sure look at it. And it goes through a process. But in that process, there's a lot of debate. And things get killed all along the way, and then sometimes resurrected. But there is a process to this. But it's still, it's very, you know, the guy who runs my assignment desk used to drive a forklift. And he is the best assignment editor I've ever worked with in my career. And he just kind of has it. And that's kind of where I'm going with this operation, that I have a lot of young people, but and there's a lot of turnover at the bottom level. But when you find the right person, you know, he was at the very lowest level in the operation when I started Celebrity Justice, as was the co-executive producer of the TV show. They were both interns, and they just, you know, they just got better and better at everything they did, and I gave them more and more and more, and now they're running the shop. So it's a very communal type place, and a place where there's a lot of opportunity. But it's, if you've seen the show, it's real young, which is, you know, now they've turned on me in a really bad way. They have turned on me. Yes?
You said that your goal when you got into this was to see if celebrities are treated more harshly, less harshly than normal people. And I mean, from what I've seen, it seems like it just depends on the judge, it depends on the case, because Paris Hilton, in one case, she'll go to prison for, you know, a long time, and then another, she'll have cocaine in her purse and she'll just get off scot-free. So
right.
What do you think?
I think that at the investigative stage, celebrities are treated way more harshly. That, especially after O.J. Simpson, police don't want the rap that they didn't investigate thoroughly enough. So what happens is, a stupid crime, they'll put 5 people on, 10 people on, just so they can say we did a thorough job. So they will look at a celebrity under a microscope much more so than they would an average person. If something actually ends up going to trial, I think there's a certain amount of goodwill with many celebrities that, well, not just before I get to the goodwill, I mean, they can hire good lawyers. And now I am of this strong belief that the most important thing in any case is a good lawyer, that it makes all the difference in the world. And I've seen it enough, I know it to be true, that a good lawyer makes all the difference. That if you have a good lawyer, the good lawyer is almost always going to win. And if you have a bad lawyer, they're probably going to lose. And it just is the case, especially when a good one is against a bad one. It's just, that's the way it works. But there is a certain amount of goodwill that celebrities have with juries that make it difficult to prosecute them, because then all of a sudden a jury's got to project the accusation against the image. And they're such polar opposites in some cases. It's, how could this person I love so much and listen to so much and bought tickets to see so much, how could they do that? And it's very difficult for them to reconcile that. And that's where the celebrity has the edge. But good lawyering is the biggest thing ultimately. That's what makes the biggest difference. But I've seen cases where, like you say, with Paris Hilton with a purse, it's ridiculous. I mean, the best, but sometimes it just comes, it's not so much, you think that it's this grand design that, oh, it's a celebrity, we have to be nice to him. Fact is, sometimes it's just sloppy work on the part of investigators, DAs, and lawyers. One of the most incredible things I've seen in a long time, we got our hands on the arrest report from Lindsay Lohan in 2007, when she was on that wild drive on Pacific Coast Highway, fueled with alcohol and cocaine. And she got arrested, took her to the police station. The arresting officer brought her into the jail cell, went into her pocket, and took out this white powdery substance. And the officer thought it was a crushed breath mint. Swear to God. I swear to God. Thought it was a crushed breath mint and threw it in the trash can. Walked out. 2 minutes later, it occurred to him, walked back in, took it out of the trash can, and that's why Lindsay Lohan spent 82 minutes in jail. It was just sloppy work. So sometimes it's, sometimes it really does come down to dumb luck and who you get. Yes?
First, thanks for coming. It's very exciting.
Oh, are you kidding? I am so thrilled to be here. I've never been more excited about talking to a group before, ever. I mean, I mean it. I can't explain this to you, and it's so funny because I don't feel like I'm in the traditional line of fire, at least, coming back into the classroom here. But this was my life. I mean, and it changed everything about the way I think, and it really had a huge impact on my life. So to come back here after all these years, it's thrilling. I got to say, it's thrilling, and this flood of memories came back when I walked through the school. Anyway, you're saying.
So this is not a legal question. This is like my personal interest about the process in a particular instance, which was, I know that when you have Britney Spears, that was legally released, and so you had, might have been a mistake, but once it was public, you could have done whatever you want with it. And then there was the instance of the kind of Rihanna, battery pictures, and those were, illegally released, yet, once they've been released, you still could have published them. So I was wondering what made you decide to go forward kind of with that and publish those pictures?
Fair question. Rihanna, we published we got hold of the pictures of Rihanna when, right after she was beaten by Chris Brown. And when we did that, there was a real debate, and it was being spun by both sides, by her side and his side, whether she was really hurt at all or whether she was hurt real badly. And both sides were spinning this, and they made it a story, so it became an issue. This ended up being pretty conclusive evidence of what happened. When we got those pictures, it's interesting that sometimes, depending on who gives you something, you just don't do it. And sometimes the person who gives it to you maybe shouldn't, but that doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't. And in this case, it was, here's what really happened. We honestly didn't know that these pictures were police pictures, because we knew that pictures had been taken at the scene. She had a friend there with a cell phone, and we didn't know when we published them. We'd never heard anything from the police until after we published it. And we had no idea, and I still don't to this day, and I don't believe that the person that we dealt with who had any connection to the police department, but, or I want to say, wait a minute. Yeah, it was the police department, I'm sorry. I was thinking whether it was the sheriff or the police, whether it was the police department. But there are times, and I'll give you an example of where, without saying who gave this to us. In 2007, probably one of our biggest stories ever, we got hold of 4 pages of a police report in the Mel Gibson DUI arrest. And that was when he went on the anti-Semitic rant. And that was a huge day for us as an operation. And what happened was we got a tip from, and this is why I have such a communal operation, because one of the PAs in my office had a friend who was a waiter at Moon Shadows where Mel Gibson left and then went out and got in his car and drove away and got stopped. And so we got a tip that he was arrested, and we published a story saying Mel Gibson was arrested, and the sheriff's department told us it was without incident. And so we published that, and then very shortly thereafter I got a phone call from somebody who said, this is a lie. This was anything but without incident. There was a huge incident. And the person started telling me this story about the Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world, and are you a Jew, and the whole thing. And I called the sheriff's department. And the PIO said, it's absolutely, absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. And he was so convincing that I was on the line on how much to pursue this. And I called the substation where he had been arrested. And the woman who answered, who I knew, I said, look, here's what I'm hearing. And she said, that's not true. But there was a little bit of a nervous laugh there. And that, honest to God, it was that much of a nervous laugh. And I just knew, I just, in my gut, I just felt there's something there. And it was nothing more than that. And then I started pursuing it, and then all day long they said, it's not true. And I started getting more information and more information and more information. And they finally were saying to me, look, if you publish the story, you will ruin your website, you will ruin your reputation, you will ruin your career. It is not true. Do not go with this story. And they were so bold. I cannot tell you how bold they were. And yet, at a point, at around 6 at night, I knew that it was true. But I knew the sheriff's department would also come out and completely repudiate this. And somehow, I got the 4 pages of the report that the deputy had been ordered to take out when he was told to rewrite the report. And I got the 4 pages. And now, I will say to you that what we did legally. Okay? Now, the issue is, did somebody else do something that might have gotten them in trouble? I will merely raise this as an argument. But if they did, then the issue is, does that mean you don't do it? I mean, this is the Pentagon Papers case that you'll be studying. But it is, just on a slightly different level. But it is. I mean, it is, because you have this information that maybe somebody should or shouldn't be giving to you, but you're taking it legally, and it's a huge news story. The fact, to me, it was a bigger story that the sheriff's department was lying, trying to cover it up, than it was what Mel Gibson did. And I really feel that way and felt that way even at the time. And so that's a situation where absolutely I published that, would publish it again. And it's interesting, their reaction, because I found out 6 months ago that after I published it, the sheriff's department, which got caught in a gigantic lie, and I was not real shy about talking about it publicly because what they did was outrageous. They got search warrants on my phone on my phones, all of my phones, my home phone, my work phone, my cell phone, and they believed that the deputy gave me the report. So they searched my phone. They got my phone records. They did search warrants on the deputy. They got his, which I found just outrageous that they did that. And the irony is, it may be legal. I thought it was so clearly illegal, under the Shield Law, under the First Amendment, under all sorts of things, but there's a crazy way the Sheriff's Department can do things, and it's frightening, because it's very chilling for reporters when they're doing stories to know that they can do something like this, and it really does chill sources who find out, oh my God, if I'm talking to you, are they going to find out? That's the whole essence of being a reporter. So that was their reaction to it, is they went for blood. But I would absolutely do that again, and it's a situation where, you have to evaluate what somebody else is giving you versus what you're doing. And sometimes what they're giving you, I remember a case where somebody came into my office and said, I have these amazing Michael Jackson documents, and they were amazing. They were unbelievable. And I looked at these things, and I finally realized that this woman worked in the law firm that prepared these, and she stole them from the law firm, and I threw out of my office and never published them. So that's a situation where we could have still done it, but that one I just absolutely wanted nothing to do with, and that was just stealing documents from a private law office, and it felt way different to me than Mel Gibson. Yes?
You still mentioned an interest in DC. I was wondering if you can elaborate on that, sort of what challenges you expect in that arena that would be different than the celebrity context.
Well, I want to someday start TMZ DC. But
Are you already hiring?
I have a passion for it, and I almost did it, and there were some circumstances that prevented me from doing it, but I'm going to do it someday. But the way I want to do it is not to just go in there and just start digging up dirt on Congress. I really think that most people feel badly that they're not engaged in the political process because it's just too hard to understand, and it's not user-friendly, and everybody that publishes for the, inside the Beltway. And there's got to be a way of getting people interested in politics where it's more user-friendly. And I think if you can bring them in at a low level, where they just, and I'm really serious, if you can bring them in at a personality level, I mean, these guys make decisions on the fate of our lives, and so they matter. And there really are enough interesting people there, and I'm not talking about the scandalous stuff, but fun things, interesting things about them that would engage people. And I've done some of these on the website and the TV show, and it works. It works in a huge way. It works. And if you can get people engaged in, something silly or simple about a congressman's life, then suddenly, they're going to listen to what that guy has to say because they have a connection with him. And you can then elevate the debate and elevate the content. And I would like to come in at a low level and do that, and then see what happens. And then eventually, you do get that big story and you put it in, and then it's kind of highbrow, lowbrow, which is kind of the way I try to program everything. I mean, maybe I'm flattering myself by saying anything is highbrow, but there's a space, between some of the things and other things. But that's what I would love to do, is to try and engage people at that base level and then get them involved and then program for outside the belt. I mean, do you guys by chance know who Aaron Schock is? He's a congressman. He's congressman from Peoria. He actually took Obama's seat. And he's 28 years old, great-looking guy, and I told the dean this last night at dinner, but it was just a funny story. When I was really into doing this, he had just gotten elected, and I was at the gym in Hawaii on vacation, and I looked up at the screen, and there was this guy, and they said Congressman-elect, and I looked at him. He's this great-looking guy, and it's Congressman-elect, and I thought, I'm going to make him the Brody Jenner of Capitol Hill. And so I sent my congressman out. I sent my I sent my cameraman out to his office, and when he was walking across the street for a vote, I had the guy walk up and say, "So what does it feel like being the Brody Jenner of Capitol Hill?" And he had no idea who Brody Jenner was. And then we started asking him, is it hard meeting people? And we just kind of had fun with him. His press secretary called me ballistic, just ballistic, and said, "How dare you? How could you do this? We have a protocol here. You can't just come in here. You have to set up an interview through me." He was furious. And I said, "Look," I said, "I'm not going to have this conversation with you if you're going to scream at me, but I will say that in 2 days you're going to call me and you're going to apologize to me, because you're going to see what this video does for your congressman, and it will do more than anything he could do times 20 on C-SPAN or CNN or any place else, because he will connect with people." So we put it on the TV show, put it on the website, then all the Chicago stations picked it up, CNN ran it, other places ran it. He called me up 2 days later, and then all of a sudden, Aaron thought, this is interesting. And so we went out and we got him again outside of C-SPAN, but this time he kind of knew we were coming. And he said, and we said, "I'm a big Lincoln fan. And I've read a bunch of Lincoln books, and Lincoln was in great shape and he had great abs. So, this was just about the time that Obama had gone to Hawaii and had taken his shirt off, and everybody was saying, "Oh, Obama's in good shape." So we went up to Aaron and said, on an ab-off, "Who's going to win, you or Obama?" And he had something kind of funny to say, and then we threw Lincoln into the mix. And it was really pretty funny. And we put that out. And then people went crazy, because it was just different and fun. So then somebody sends me a picture. And it's a picture of Aaron at a swimming pool without a shirt. And who knew? But the guy is just ripped. And he is. And I mean, it was crazy. I mean, that I picked this congressman, but it just turned out to be so. So I called his office and I said, "Look, if you don't want me to run this, I won't run this. But this will be fun." And they said, "Look, go ahead and do it." Well, they did features on him on the Today Show, Good Morning America, Reuters, CBS, Nightline, The Colbert Report, The Daily Show. He became a star. And I had dinner with him about 6-7 months ago, and I was in DC, and I went to his office before we went to dinner, and he was having a telephonic town hall. There were 10,000 people on the phone. So that's what I'm talking about. It's like it came in at a really low level, but they became interested in him. And they would get 30 people on this phone call before. He's a freshman congressman. And so that's why I think there's a way, I mean, it's, everybody does the same thing the same way all the time. And if you look at it differently, people will laugh at you and they'll make fun of it and say it's frivolous and everything else. But there's a design to a lot of this stuff. And I think if you create that kind of interest, that you would suddenly see way more interest in the political process. So abs turn into political involvement. Yes?
Has there ever been anything you ran that you regretted later because of the repercussions of it? I mean, obviously it's out there, but on later reflection, maybe you wouldn't have done it?
Yeah. There have been things. And, I mean, one of them, and it's an issue when you have a staff too. I mean, it's a tricky situation, because when you have a staff and they're creative people, you can't. I don't think I should be so single-minded. I mean, I'm not in the wheelhouse of a lot of other people now. I mean, I've got kids in their 20s who are way more in tune with a lot of things that I'm not. And I can't just, step on people and say, you can't do this, you can't do that. And so I try to create something of I control a lot, but at the same time, I try to balance it. And so there's a lot of give and take. And, we debate, and I mean, I'm not real proud of this, but when Jennifer Love Hewitt gained some weight, one of my guys came up with something in the office. We just thought it was like the funniest thing ever. And they said, we've got to publish it. It'll be fun. People will talk about it. It'll just raise the debate about weight and all this stuff. And it was all bullshit. And I shouldn't have done it. But the tagline on it was, I know what you ate last summer. And we published it. And the funny thing is that it ended up doing a lot of good because Jennifer Love Hewitt, who by the way now is just so hot, right? So I mean you get to, but she was pissed and then went to People magazine, and People did this whole thing on the cover. So our little story became the poster child for, you know, what not to do. And I regret that. And there are things, listen, we publish 40 stories a day. And I'm not going to pretend that that I couldn't have done something more artfully, that this should have been different. I mean, but at the same time too, you know, you can't sit there and wring your hands. You know, it ultimately becomes a body of work, and you do your best. And there are times when you correct and, you know, make adjustments. But I think everybody in this business, and when I say in this business, in journalism, in any business, you make mistakes. And I mean, anybody who says, no, there's nothing I regret, they're lying to you. They're just lying. Yes?
I wanted to get into the topic about journalists and over pursuing a subject, almost to the point of stalking them. Like, I grew up around Mulholland Boulevard, which is where Britney Spears lives, just where a lot of paparazzi are constantly chasing her. It's a traffic hazard,
Yeah.
and it's amazing nobody's been killed yet. But like, at what point is there like a standard of safety, or is it just like anything good goes, Wild Wild West, just kind of snap, snap, snap?
No, I mean, I know exactly where you're talking about, and that somebody will die at that intersection one day. And no, and I say that seriously, and it's horrifying. And I see our camera guys, what I've done is I put all our camera guys on salary. So it doesn't matter what they get or don't get. We disincentivize them from chasing people. They're going to get the same amount of money whether they get a great shot or no shot. And you know, they know we mean business, so they can't do it. And they also know that there will be cameras showing them if they do it and they get fired. So I think we've done a pretty good job. At the same time, there are a lot of renegade cameras out there. And what's happened is we've had a measure of success that other people are trying to duplicate, and they think the way to do it is just to put it on steroids and just go out there. And there are so many reckless people. I mean, they've beaten up our camera guys, they have crashed into our cars, they've created unbelievable traffic hazards, and it's a huge problem. I don't know that you solve the problem. I mean, they've come up with these ridiculous laws in LA where they've created this bubble, a 25-foot bubble, that you can't get within 25 feet of a celebrity. I mean, it's stupid. You know, it's just, it's absurd. But, and that's gonna go nowhere. But what they do need to do is prosecute some of these people who are doing it. But I do think it's gotten so desperate that, you know, I think somebody's going to get badly hurt before it changes. And I wish that weren't going to happen. But honestly, I don't see how it's not with the climate. I happen to live on a street that there's a celebrity who lives 2 doors above me, and they've used my house as a staging area. So you can imagine the irony of me wanting to say, get the hell out of here, right? You know, and so I mean, I look out my window and see what they're doing, and it's unbelievable. So it's dangerous, and I know exactly where you're talking about. Yeah.
How much of your justification for filming people and getting these news stories hinges on the fact that they're celebrities? And I mean, would you go into looking at people like that, or investigating like that on people who are not celebrities? I mean, is because you focus mainly on celebrities. I mean, is that part of the?
Well, we define celebrities loosely. No, I mean, look, we go to, for the most part, we go to places where they know there are cameras. I mean, I assure you that most of the places that these celebrities go where they're shot do not have the best food in town. And they go there because they know there are going to be cameras there, and it's part of a game, that they know it. I mean, Boa, which has good food actually. You know, there I can name them: Boa, Medeo, Mr. Chow. I mean, there are 5 places in town where we get most of our stuff, and then at certain clubs where they know there are cameras. But we don't go hunting around generally. I mean, we might be, you know, there are certain streets where we'll just kind of be walking, but we also know there are certain, now we've done it for 5 years, there are certain celebrities who play ball, certain celebrities who don't want to do it, and we make a point of staying away from them. So we try to keep our distance from the ones who don't want to. We play with the ones who do. But my feeling about it is, especially for the TV show, and really for the site too, nobody wants to see a confrontation. My television show, I want it to be fun. I want people to laugh. I want people to say, look how funny the camera guy was with the celebrity, where you feel like they're getting along. For business, I mean, I'm a business guy. For my business, it's a good thing when they get along. That's what I encourage. I want them to have fun conversations. I don't want to confront. I mean, it's bad for business. I don't put that video on when we get it, because nobody wants to see it. It's uncomfortable. So we're looking for people to have fun with celebrities and celebrities to have fun with us. And it's very self-selecting that way. So, you know, in terms of who we shoot, I mean, we have been responsible for making certain people into celebrities by association. And, you know, our proudest moment is Kim Kardashian, who we shot walking into a club with Paris Hilton as poor Tara Reid sat behind the ropes, wishing that she was still Paris's best friend. And the video just went everywhere. And everybody said, who is that girl? And literally that made Kim Kardashian, well, and then the sex tape. Yeah. Yeah.
You're a public figure in your own right now, and I'm just wondering how, as you've become more well-known and famous yourself, that's affected how you cover the people that you cover. Do you empathize with them more? And what's been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I do. And I personally don't like, I mean, I don't like it at all. I mean, I don't go out a lot. You know, and I'm not particularly comfortable doing it either. I do. I mean, if somebody comes up to me with a camera, I mean, I got a traffic ticket the other day in Venice, and I mean, it was wall-to-wall traffic, and the idea of me standing there with a cop, I mean, I cannot tell you how many people jumped out of their car and took pictures because it was just, they thought this is just irresistible. I mean, it was, and you know, and what am I going to do, right? I mean, do I like it? Not particularly. And partly because, you know, it's not like anybody's going to run it anyway. I mean, you know, Entertainment Tonight's not going to put me on their show, you know, probably. But I do empathize more. And I mean, what you're saying is, am I a hypocrite? And you know, I mean, look, I've got more of an appreciation of it now than I did 5 years ago. But, you know, what I really tell our guys is only talk to the people who want to have fun with you. And we really do try and make, and if you watch the show, and the videos in the show are the videos that go up on the site. If you watch the show, in terms of the videos, you're just going to pretty much see people who are having fun with us. I mean, it's pretty much just a laugh. So I'm conscious of it. And I'm probably more conscious of it today than I was 5 years ago. For better or worse, it's true. Yeah.
Well, following up on something you said earlier about defining celebrity in a fairly loose manner, or also possibly helping generate celebrity. Obviously, given the sort of transformations of journalism through, because of the internet and this sort of move towards reality television, the whole idea of like a public figure or a celebrity has become, I guess, a bit more fluid, and the question of newsworthiness has changed a bit. Where do you think the lines should fall, or what do you think qualifies somebody to be a public figure?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where that line is anymore. I mean, with reality TV, and it more, you know, it's not even so much a public figure as a limited public figure, because it's really interesting that people are now, you know, coming out of the woodwork to make money. And what you see is that, you know, there's a case yesterday that where Justin Bieber was in Canada, and he was playing laser tag, and some kid came up to him, and Justin Bieber allegedly brushed him or hit him, and now the father is screaming, "I'm a lawyer," you know, and literally did, and then filed an assault case against him, and so all of a sudden, you know, it's funny because that guy started calling the media. So suddenly he becomes a limited public figure, right? And then we talked to certain people inside this investigation to find out that what really happened was the guy's son called Justin Bieber a faggot, and called him it twice, and then put his hand out, and all Justin Bieber did was push his hand away and walked away. And that's a whole different story. Now, suddenly you're putting a story up about, you know, something pretty incendiary. And now the issue is, okay, well, what are the consequences here? Is this a public figure? Is this a private figure? That's when it comes up more, when suddenly somebody comes out of the woodwork who is clearly a private figure who makes a spectacle. And that's happening a lot. And it's happening a lot because people smell money. And the way this game has worked in the practice of law, you know, where a Rachel Yucatel can get $10 million by telling Tiger Woods, I'm going to have a news conference and basically tell everything about your life unless I get $10 million by sunset, or and got it 2 hours before the news conference, but that's legal because you frame it in the context of a lawsuit. Then, you know, it changes a lot, and people who never thought of making money are thinking, this is my retirement now. And I've seen it so much. It's in the last year, it's crazy. It is, and there's a whole part of the bar now that is doing this. I know a lawyer in town who basically handles legalized extortion cases for his clients. And that's what he does, and deals with the same group of lawyers over and over and over again. Can you guess which ones? Maybe you've seen a couple of them on TV, but this lawyer literally fields extortion calls all day long, and they do it, and they will pay off. It's become a legalized business within the legal profession. It's just shocking how this works. It's shocking how it works. Yeah.
So I was wondering, you mentioned that you strive to be even-handed in celebrity justice, but also you are a business, and I wonder how you aspire to be able to pursue, I guess, both as sort of maybe competing objectives with in DC, and whether you think you have some responsibility, like, as a whole, sort of, you know, follow the ads and also like Portland senators, or whether you look at whatever you want, and you know, ETV's responsibility is to go to the other side. How do you plan on working that out?
Well, DC is, I mean, my idea for DC is different from what I do on TMZ. I mean, I'm really covering Hollywood on TMZ. I mean, and some of it I know is frivolous, but we're really covering it like a news operation. And it could be a frivolous story, but we treat it with the same rigors that we treat the more important stories. I mean, we still have things go through research, go through this. I mean, we go through the process. So, I mean, this really is chasing stories. And some of these stories I want to turn into bigger stories. I'll give you an example of one if you want. But we cover stories. I mean, whatever is going on there, we help set the agenda because we know we're really plugged in. So TMZ, to me, is not this kind of fringe thing that's looking at the baseline. We're really covering Hollywood. And we've got others using us as a wire service now to help them set the agenda. I mean, they've got people at other operations whose job it is basically just to look at TMZ all day and say, okay, they just published this, they just did this, and they just follow our stories. But you know, DC to me is different. I want to come in on the fringe on DC. I mean, it's just a different MO. So I want to come in on the fringe. I don't want to cover the core yet. I want to get people who aren't interested in politics but want to be interested in politics, or don't even think they're interested but might become. And that's not getting in the center. I want to start in the fringe. It's completely different than the model we have now.
Time for one more.
Okay. But I'll tell you this. I will tell you this story. Just one. I know, but I'll do one more. But I do want to tell you this story about, because this is really interesting about Mel Gibson, and it involves the legal profession. That we did a story. Oksana Grigorieva is the woman who is accusing Mel Gibson of beating her, and it's just the most bizarre story. But she's now being investigated for extortion. He's being investigated for domestic violence, and she's putting herself off as this Russian immigrant who is fighting the Mel Gibson machine, and poor Russian immigrant who doesn't have any resources. Well, we found out Oksana Grigorieva has had 39 lawyers. 39 lawyers. And we put them up on the site on Saturday. We named them. And it's just unbelievable what she's done. And the reason she can afford 39 lawyers is because she will then petition the court, or the lawyers petition the court, and ask the judge to make Mel Gibson pay her legal fees. And he has now paid since June over $1 million in legal fees that she has billed for. 18 lawyers have billed over $1 million since June. They have 7 lawyers on conference calls that don't even need to exist. I mean, they don't need the conference calls, much less putting 7 lawyers on it. It has become welfare relief for some of these lawyers. I'm serious. It's unbelievable. It's shocking. And then you start, I started looking at this story, and the story I want to tell that I think is so interesting is that, and I'm not saying this judge, because this judge is a particularly good judge who's handling the case, but you start looking at the way the system is in LA and really everywhere else. In family law, this is a huge problem. They use a lot of private judges in family law. Where people, have a lot of money and they don't want to wait their turn to get into court, so they hire a private judge to mediate things, and it's just as binding. And then they go into court, and then, a sitting judge ratifies it. But you can get things done real quickly, real privately, and it's expensive. These judges go for $500, $800 an hour, and it's a huge amount of money for these judges, almost all of whom are retired judges. And so, guess who gets these plum assignments? The ones who get the plum assignments are the retired judges who, when they were on the bench, approved all these attorneys' fees. And then you think, well, wait a minute. But once they retire, the lawyers can screw them and just say, I didn't like him as a judge anyway, I'm not going to use him in my arbitration case. But the reason they do is because they want the sitting judges that they're relying on to see that they always honor the unspoken deal once they leave the bench. So you've got this unbelievable thing going on where somebody with a lot of money, whether it's a celebrity or not, gets fleeced. And the person that a lot of these lawyers want to represent is not the rich guy. They want to represent the other person. They're dying to represent the other person, because then they can overbill. The celebrity doesn't see it, or the rich person doesn't see what's really going on, and the judge just keeps approving it. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It is unbelievable. I'm going to tell that story, I hope, in the next couple of weeks. But I got to figure out how to tell it in a way that people are going to understand. But it's a huge story. Okay, one more.
How did you get started in this line of work? I mean, was it like through hustling and networking? How did you do it?
I was teaching law school, and I was doing a little practicing on the side. And the dean of my law school, a long time ago, there was something called Proposition 13 to lower property taxes so that the rate would only be 1% of assessed value, because people were losing their homes in California. And I was 28 years old, and there was a guy named Howard Jarvis who was promoting Proposition 13, and he was debating people, and he was killing people, just killing them, because everybody had they were part of a special interest. So whenever they do a debate, he would just annihilate the other side, because he would basically, well, you're a homeowner, right? You run this real estate company, and they'd find that they all had vested interests. So the dean of my law school ran the No on 13 campaign. So he had the bright idea that he'd take a guy who lived in an apartment and had no vested interest and put him up against the 73-year-old guy. And so I started debating Howard Jarvis, and it became really entertaining. It is the most remarkable school. And even though I don't practice, there isn't an hour that goes by when I don't use what I learned here. and I swear to God I mean this, there is not an hour that goes by. The critical thinking you learn in this place, and the ability to look at something, whether it's a brief, or whether it's hearing an argument, or whether it's listening to a news story and poking a hole in it because it doesn't make sense. It's unbelievable that this skill is so fungible and so useful that my training as a lawyer is so much more valuable than any training I could have gotten as a journalist. I'm positive. I'm positive about that, because ultimately it's about critical thinking. It's about thinking about creative ways around the word no. It's well, yeah, I mean, but that's what I tell my staff. I mean, listen, good stories don't come easy, and good stories are stories that, I mean, when the sheriff's department tells you you're wrong, you're going to ruin your career, and you have a gut that that they're not telling you the truth, you've got to find a way around it, and you've got to figure out how do you get at the truth, and it's always not a straight line. And the skill you learn in this room, I'm telling you, it is there's nothing close that whatever I've achieved, it's because of here. And it's not the traditional path, and it's clearly, I mean, it took them decades to invite me here. Right? I mean, it did. Right? But what I've learned is every bit as useful as somebody who's practicing law right now. And I mean that. It's like I cherish what I got out of this school. You have no idea how you're going to walk out of here with a skill set that will allow you to do things that you never would have dreamed of. And it opens up opportunities. This is the transformative place of my life to this day. There's nothing I've done that comes close to being at the University of Chicago, seriously. So this is something that you probably will not understand until you leave. But it's absolutely true. It's good talking to you guys.